Welcome everyone to another interview, show and tell, something like that, between the somewhere in the middle, with Allen Dilling, where he's got new art. We're going to talk about the new art, but Allen, I think the new version of the Infernals that we saw in 0.4 has gone over very well. Of course, it's not done, so now you got more stuff to show us. What are you showing off this time?
Yeah, so we have a lot of things, and a lot of things we can't show you, of course. But we've been crazy busy. There's multiplayer. There's the campaign, trying to get the tech going, and just also on the fly developing some of the expanding on some of the lore and the themes and the characters as we kind of rework some stuff. And so yeah, I think today I'm going to show you some stuff that we talked about a long time ago, maybe when we first talked as in concept form, and now we actually have it in the game, which is awesome. It took a while. I think it's also a little insight into what it takes and how long it takes to make something on a smaller team to actually go from concept to shipping, or even shipping in game just to get it in there is a lot of work. So yeah, everyone, sometimes not everybody, but sometimes people are like, just add 6 animations to that guy, or like just remodel this that, and it's sometimes it's some things are easy, like tweaking things, but by and large from the scratch it's takes a long time. So first thing I was going to show you today was the new HQ. And so here it is, not quite hooked up, so I had to cheat and hook it in this file with this one. But and it has animation, there are effects and all that stuff, which is not in there yet. But this is a new one that just a little something. I wanted to change it up because it's the first thing you see, and I think it has meaning in a couple different ways, showing the new higher fidelity, a little new detail and direction, and then also it showcases, and it's a statement of, like, when you first see anything you play on this, you start a game as Vanguard, you see it immediately, and it's a notice right there, like, hey, this is different, something is different. And I think that matters as far as just like kind of the face of the game when you see a screenshot like that where you first boot up the game. So we have to put some like lighting in here, and rotate the radar and all that kind of stuff. But this is the 3 modes, and so you have these kind of smokestack things, because we're thinking about, like, what is an HQ? And Timmy and I, he's our concept artist. We're talking about, like, okay, when we concept this, which he did, what is it really? Is it a base? Is it like military? And it's always just kind of vague, which is fine. It's a video game, it's sci-fi, and you don't get lost in the weeds too much. But we're all like, okay, well, you do a lot of refining here, so let's make it feel like you can go into it and like give it smokestacks equivalent energy would come out of here, or like glowing, cool looking sci-fi smoke. And that kind of makes sense because that's what you're doing. You're mining things, refining things, and there's a way to enter it and exit it for the new servos. And just trying to figure out, without getting too crazy down the rabbit hole, what helps make it feel like it's doing its job. Because it's everyone thinks it's a military operation, but like there's no guns on it, so it should be an HQ and look like it's got levels and scale to it, like these command windows. Um, are kind of they just give some scale, and so it kind of helps it feel like it's a bigger operation. It's got these windows that overlook things. So again, looks like a some kind of command tower element. And so this is all on. Also, this is on a map called Boneyard, which I think everybody's familiar with. That is it's being tweaked right now. We need to pass on and make it a little more gritty, a little less happy, and it really is just some texture changes and some lighting changes, and a few props here and there, and it makes a huge difference. So I think that also gives the players at least a facelift and like a new coat of paint on their play experience. And also, again, hey, this is not the same old thing anymore. Even if the gameplay is identical and everybody loves it, this, I think, this is the favorite map from what I've heard from the fans. Um,
So Boneyard is now a forest tile set, not a desert tile set, or is that just the way the editor is making things look right now?
no, no, we changed it up to make it just for reasons which we'll show you guys later on, not today, but we're trying to mix up a little bit, and so keep the same gameplay, and again, get a fresh coat of paint on it, and then we're gonna use the desert tile set for other stuff.
Okay.
And
Very
there's like more
interesting.
bones because it's boneyard, and so we have these little props of bones, but I wanted some big ones, so actually we're gonna model some huge demon heads, um, and so they'll go in here and replace some of these older ones.
That makes sense.
And then we
So
also have new. Oh, go ahead.
I just going back to the the HQ 1 second. So, uh, got a couple questions about that because one, when we looked at the Infernal new HQ that you were talking about, whatever the new name for that was, back in the most recent interview, you also had this pillar idea that was going to slowly rise as we went from tier 1 to tier 3 out of the structure. So, my question is, as we look at a similar idea with Vanguard, is that something that you're looking at as like common shape language to identify a tier across like all factions, or Convergent Evolution Infernals are going to change? How does that work?
It's just, I think in general, it's very loosely tied to that theory. Just the taller
Hmm.
command structure. It's like the biggest building is like the headquarters kind of vibe. And so the only problem with an RTS is you can't get very high because you can hide units behind it, and there's ways to solve that. But we try and be pretty light with that touch. And so otherwise, us artists, we'd make things crazy tall, and especially with the camera being up top down from up high, it just makes everything more flat. And you're like, and so the minute you make them too high, the designers are like on you, which for good reason. There's no case where design doesn't come first in our considerations, but sometimes we'll push it a little bit, like, you can still see most of the guy behind there. And so, if anything ever, and the good thing about it, if anything ever happens with the height, we can change it immediately. And so,
Hmm.
there's ways to cheat things. And so we try not to push our, art card too far, so to speak. And like, it's got to be cool, but part of our job is we have these constraints for the genre, the memory or whatever it is, the resources we have, and we have to just make it work within that. And I'm kind of goofy, and we're all geeky, of course. And when you talk about the predator thing, where the better they get, they lose their equipment. So by the end, it's like some badass predator. He's got like a rusty spoon, and he's got to kill 100 people with it, right? And so we have to figure out things like, hey, there's constraints about how big we want to make it. Like the hedgehog, I'm like, make it bigger, and it just for this role, it's the right size it is. But um, yeah, I remember in past games I worked on, we tried to have these huge mechs in the game, and then like yeah, whatever you guys want. And then we get in the game, like this is unplayable. You can hide your whole army behind them, and we're like, oh, okay, you got a good point. So we try not to be like too stuck on the artsy side of things. I always tell my crews, like, we are not artists first and foremost. We're game developers that make art, and the product is what we're doing. Everything's got to work toward that goal. So and we don't need to make something. If there's like a small unit in the game that we make 1,000 of, it's got to be very light and cheap, and it might not look that great up close, but for a portfolio or art station, but that's not the point.
It makes a lot of sense. Actually, that was a question I had. Some people were asking when they said, "Oh, you were going to do this interview." I was actually specifically about hedgehog size, where the question was, in a lot of the concept art, hedgehog looked a much bigger in the context in comparison to like a human size something, and yet in the game, hedgehog is a lot is a little bit smaller. And it sounds like the answer to that question is, well, the hedgehog, if it was in the world, would be bigger, but it has to fit a certain gameplay role and a certain gameplay size, and that's what defines how big it is, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's and it sometimes it depends on the engine, the pathing, or
Hmm.
the camera view, things like that. And so there's always little touchy things, but the main thing, as long as it plays fun and paths well around each other and all that stuff, that's what really matters. And so, and that's just a readability issue, but I think we've done a pretty good job making everything feel pretty unique from
Gotcha.
each other.
Well, we've held off long enough because you just keep pathing over and hinting at these new unit designs. So, Alan, lots of new units. Let's go over them.
To start off with, we on the low end of things, here's a brute. Everyone's seen this for a little while now, but we've changed some color on it to make it pop more, and also with the gaunt, so that they're and sometimes you get these in mass and they could blend in because there's a lot of demonic themes, but we've separated out the hue of her and make it a little more purplish. Put some emissive team color on her back, and her glaive she carries is hot white with the team color on it, so it just pops in general. And then we put some runes on his sword and changed up some of his textures to be a little darker. So again, there's more of a contrast there. And here's another take on the dragon. It was the flay dragon because it was skinless. Apparently, got flayed, and so we're kind of going back on that and retconning it, and it's just a demonic dragon. So a lot more team color gradient across from front to back, and then there's one of the big themes I've talked about before is runes and symbols on the back, and it's hard to see on the wings when it's moving, but everything I like to put runes on a lot of stuff just to make it feel like it's more magical, even though they're kind of higher tech sci-fi in some ways. It just helps ground it, and I don't know. There's something about like the old Doctor Strange stuff, like when he does the hand motions and like emblems appear and runes and symbols and glyphs. I just love that. I'm gonna try and push that as much as we can later on.
Hmm.
And same thing with the Spriggan. It's he's tiny, but we consolidated team color, which is a big thing. Sometimes the team color is subtle or it's spread around too much, and try to make it consolidated, let your eye kind of focus on it, and also get him some emissive team color in the back and subtle team color on the wings. So now he'll show up a little better.
Gotcha. Actually, so you're talking about centralizing team color a little bit. When Stormgate, when Infernals first got their like fully modeled, fully textured out units on the old version of the Bruton and the Gaunt, one of the things that was an issue was that Bruton's Gaunt, it was very hard to read the game. And this was actually true of Vanguard as well. Like this was like late beta, I think. Where it was just hard to differentiate between different units and figure that out. Then there were some lighting passes and some other things that changed that. But the most recent version 0.4 introduced some of that again, where it's kind of hard to figure out what's happening with brutes and gaunts, especially when the curse effect is applied. So it sounds like some of that is getting fixed by what you've talked about with concentrating team color and changing the hues a little bit. But how do you look at making sure that while it looks good, when you have a bunch of them on the field, you can actually see what's happening?
Yeah, it's always hard because there's, like again, it's the engine, it's the views, it's the camera perspective and the field of view and everything. And so we go through there's a lot of factors that goes through it, and it's not like one big meeting where you talk about it all. But to that point, we had a chat the other day. We're going to continue this about like the whole army. Let's finally look at everything at once and see like where we can consolidate team color, amp it up more. Maybe we have to change the colors it's referencing and data. And it's just a lot of it's more of an art than a science because we want to make it just X's and O's, 1, 0, and maybe some of the pros would like this, but we would just have a solid blue character, and that's actually, I don't want to give any ideas, but I think that would make everybody happy, but the artists and everyone else in the dev team would cry.
Yeah,
But
but even then, if you have 10 solid blue characters right next to each other, then that's also that's a hard judgment as well.
that's a good point. That's a good point. And also one more thing, I forgot about this till a second ago because we just got this back in. We had it in Krogoth,
Hmm.
and Jesse Brophy is a technical wizard and an awesome artist, and he got this working. So if it's hard to tell without it, with it on, until you see without it, but I'll show you back and forth. There's a rim light on
Hmm.
this, and it's like a Fresnel shader, so it emulates just a backlighting, and it makes the units pop really well. And you're like, that's subtle, and then you take it off, and you're like, oh, and you can tell the Gaunt doesn't have it on her.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask
And
about because you hinted at that in a previous interview, one or two interviews ago, about how Jesse was working on that, but there were just issues with certain drivers that wasn't letting it work. So I was gonna ask you about when that was gonna happen, when we were gonna finally get that in. Sounds like we do now. That's awesome.
yeah, that'll
Um,
be in our next release. And it was one of those things we were super bummed out about because it's subtle, but it's super helpful. And it was something like a video card or on low specs, some kind of rare combination. It would just start over blooming, and just be like flashing hardcore. And we're like it got to the point where I'm like, I really want this in. Like, how many percentage of people have this problem? Is it just like 5 people? But now we solved it for real. So that's going to be on everything probably this week, we're just testing it out right now. But yeah, it's super cool. It's subtle, but it's super cool. And it's funny and it's kind of reaffirming. We showed somebody who used to work here that's still in touch with everybody, just a little quick update, and he's like, he immediately spotted it, and we're like, oh, that's super cool. Like he gets it where I don't think it's not something you would notice unless it's not when it's there, you see it, but you don't appreciate it until it's gone. So yeah, I think that's a cool thing. There's always subtle things like that we're trying to do to make things better. We're always tweaking the shroud a little bit based on feedback and various settings. Like the shroud is a really good feature, but it's tricky in some ways. Where on high ground, it's different opacity than low ground, so you can kind of tell when you're looking on a cliff from the up a cliff. You're looking up north on the ground. You can't see where the cliff edge is. And sometimes with the lighting, the terrain just looks like it keeps going. And so we did that to help look at distinguish the layers more, the levels, high and low. And then on some maps where we go, either we start the baseline of the middle ground too high or too low. Sometimes we can get to the point where it's like too opaque or too faded. Like there's too much of a delta there. So like, we get reports back and we're like, that's fine. I just tested on this map. And like, is that the only map you've tested it on? Like maybe. And so like, it's always an ongoing, um, just, effort to get everything dialed in just right. And the fans have been, and the players have been so supportive, and also just really great with feedback, because we can test it all we want internally, but you get a bunch of people playing it, and then some of these issues pop up, and we're trying to jump on them immediately. But they've been super supportive in reporting things, and understanding that this is still a work in progress.
Speaking of which, with the Shroud, and we'll get to the rest of the units that you keep teasing us with. One of my favorite aspects of New Shroud is how when you have a bunch of Shroud generators together, you get this like really deep foggy effect that you'll often see like late game deep in Infernal bases. But there has always been a question as to whether that is something that is by design or something that's just a happy accident. So stacking Shroud to give this deep foggy idea, is that by design, Alan?
If it's cool, it's by design. I'll say. Everyone knows that. It's not a feature; it's a bug. It's not a bug; it's a feature. Damn it. So that actually was unintended. We're fixing that right now. Where every building. Okay, it used to be the particle we spawn in, whatever the math is behind it, that's on top of the foggy stuff in the embers, on top of the shroud. That would be produced by the shroud stones, and then we switch it to buildings. And so every building's like, cool, I got some too. And so it reset all the things to get multiplied. And so we started noticing that too in the campaign. We're like, that makes I'm just seeing things, right? Yeah, that looks a little foggy, maybe it's whatever. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, something's up there. And it started getting to the point where it was kind of annoying because it would cover up too much, depending on how you laid out your base. And it was cool because it broke up the base. It wasn't just the same. Broke up the look. Wasn't the same fog value everywhere. But ultimately, we had to tone it down. So we're going through that process right now. But yeah, that
Hmm.
was it was cool, until it wasn't.
I don't think it's ever until it wasn't. I every time I see it and I play Infernals, I think it's kick ass. But obviously, y'all know better in this case, and I'm sure that especially if there are any kind of performance considerations, I understand why that would have to go down. But Alan, this is my personal appeal. It's I think it's awesome. So there
We're
is
not gonna get rid of it. We're just gonna
okay,
just make it a little bit
okay.
less, because in some extreme cases, people were like, I can't see stuff.
But more units. Let's take a look at more units.
Okay, so this has been coming for a while. This is the helicarrier. We're not.
Ooh.
It's not a helicarrier anymore. It's going to be the same unit as far as design and everything goes, and the functionality. But it's going to be called. I'm going with Hurricane, but we'll see how that officially pans out. But it's because the helicarrier just didn't fit anymore
Hmm.
as far as spaceship. But same functionality.
Yeah, that looks great. It also shares a lot of design language with the new Hornet, and because we can see the Hornet there, and it already is a bit of a different Hornet than what we have in 0.4. But I did have a question actually about the Hornet a little bit. This Hornet that we see now, is that a result of the feedback from people talking about the 0.4 Hornet? Was it just a Hornet that was like half redone and not there yet? What's that process like?
I'm trying to figure out which one it was. I think the only thing was the same model. I think the only thing we did was we tweaked the textures a little bit.
It was the same model. It's a looks like the gun was in line with the
Oh,
Hornet instead
right.
of underslung, and the leading edge was far blockier, I think, than the Hornet that we can see here.
Yeah, we tweaked some normals on it, and we shrunk the gun down because my everything starts off with like, okay,
Hmm.
here's how it's gonna be, and 6 months from now, in its grand scheme of things, it's so cool, and you think about it, and at halftime we find some other cool path that
Hmm.
doesn't quite follow what you thought. So my thinking was, it was this huge gun, and it would be like for anti-air, and it had a little more pew pew or missiles for the ground, and then you could upgrade it, and it would maybe just wouldn't be there at all until you did an upgrade.
Hmm.
And but that you can't tell that design, hey, to make this happen. So I'm like, you have options if you ever upgrade it in some way to stronger air. If we can just slap this thing in there, but it stayed more or less the same functionality wise. So we just shrunk it down because it was a little too. It just looked like it was just going to blast a hole through this, the whole level. It was just too
Hmm.
big, and so and it was taken away from the identity of the game, or the identity of the unit. So we put it out below a little bit, and then we changed like some of the roughness and the shininess of it, the metallic, especially on the cockpit, and then just tweak the textures a tiny bit. But yeah, you're right. It's the normals are smoother now because it used to be a little more sharp on the edges. So, and then there is a correlation with this and the new Hurricane.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very evident. Speaking of which, it looks to me that the stationary the animations, a lot of these animations have been improved. I feel like the Hornet was a really good example of this, where it would move around like a land speeder, where it was just it didn't have any Z bobbing. It would just kind of be very moved around like a boat on water versus an aircraft. Are there new animations, new motion animations as part of this that we're looking at right now?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There's not a ton for stuff like this where it just have like pieces to animate. There's little air brake fins that go up and down, but that really is just acceleration, deceleration, like a little bit of subtle motion up and down, and then like banking.
Hmm.
And it's dialing in all those things. And the problem is with RTSs, as you know, is nothing really acts like a plane too much
Yeah.
because they're not flying; they're just hovering there. So we're trying to get that, especially with the banking, as much as we can to get a little more dynamic vibe to them. And yeah, that's like here's a good example here on the Hurricane. It's tilting and it feels kind of lumbering, and we have a turn radius
Hmm.
for whenever it turns. That helped a lot. We changed that up in point 4, and so like some bigger units, like the brute versus the fiend would try to have different turning radiuses, and it made a big difference. Is like one of those things again where you don't think about it till it's in there. You're like, oh, that looks first of all it
Yeah.
looks just smoother, like better frame rate, and it just feels a little more flavor into it too. And like some units like the fiend are super back and forth, super freaking out, and they're just radically fast, and it just makes it a little more like sketchy, weird, and a little more scary. And then something more lumbering just takes just a little more, just a quarter second longer, and it helps a lot with the weight
Mm.
of it.
Yeah, certainly the Hornet in particular looks like it handles a lot more like an aircraft, which that's actually a really marked improvement. But talk to me about the Sentinel a little bit because we saw the concept art. The I actually going back a second here because we have a lot of these units. Sentinel's, I think, the first one that we've seen here that we haven't seen in game yet. That you have the concept art doesn't quite match what the concept art is. What is talk to me about that process of moving from this concept art, putting it in game, and then figuring out what you need to tweak to make it work in game versus in concept art.
Yeah, this is something where again, it was like kind of low hanging fruit. It wasn't a huge production hit because there's not like there's nothing moving on it, right? It's got a little
Hmm.
spinny thing in the middle and it hovers. And so these kind of built units are much easier to put together because there's no animation time and less rigging time and all that. So that was one of the things I wanted to do was take out the old one that looked it was really big at one point.
Hmm.
And when you scale things up or down that much, it just sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't. And so I wanted something that looks a little more high tech, a little more just some more of the new flavor we brought in without betraying the old ones because we can't change everything at once. So we're kind of
Hmm.
riding this line of like 1.5 version.
Hmm.
And then as we started, blocking it out, like the wings changed, and we started looking at it in 3D. Everything you put in 3D and you block it out from game view, it's always it's always somewhat different. Like we know this going into it because we're experienced with it, and we know that this is the view that the concept is from. But until you see it in there, it's just always hard to tell. And so again, this is just a art swap. There's no different design to it, but we still got to put some effects on them a little bit here. I think you see the green is trailing behind it because I didn't put on the local checkbox in the particle emitter. But yeah, this in Kristen is our animator. She did a great job with all these, just making them feel very floaty and like you said, aircraft versus just a boat or a
Skimmer,
hovering
yeah.
yeah skimmer. Yeah, totally. So it was just something that there's a little bit of Robotech in here of old school. I grew up with that a long time ago in Macross, and
Yeah, yeah,
so a
yeah.
little bit of that stuff. Just nothing too overt, but um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the definitely not legal uh, mech warrior mechs that were straight lifts of Macross Robotech.
nice.
Or I guess Robotech is mech warrior. So, but yes, you can definitely see that there. But so Some of these structures that we see on the ground right now are familiar, right? We got the machine lab right there. We got the biokinetic lab. What is this new thing that's here?
It started off as a mech bay replacement,
Okay.
and then we were like, the mech bay looks cool because it's got the molten lava and the molten steel on it, so it looks
Mhm.
kind of more distinct. And so I think right now, I mean, again, we always have a master plan, so this is not, this is totally determined, a long time ago, or maybe just flip a coin. But the machine lab is where we're kind of swap it out with probably because we looked at
Okay.
some other things, and there's a little bay inside here. It's a little dark right now. We could light it up, but that's going to swap out for this building is the
Okay.
current thinking. And so again, it's kind of with the new style goes along with the where is it here? It goes along with this new style a little bit, which we're trying to blend in so it shouldn't feel like a new style. It should feel just like an elevated a continuation, a slight elevation of it of the old style. And so I don't want like half the buildings or units to look one way and the other half of the army to look something else. So it's
Mhm.
tricky.
Yeah, make it all fit in. And actually, this goes into something that I'm always really curious about because for me, the machine lab is rather nostalgic because I think it was the first structure that was revealed as part of like on social media when when Frost Giant first started going and like revealing things. It was like a Valentine's Day short where we had the first hit of the Stormgate music, but of course, it's now being replaced. There is an adage or a saying in any sort of creative endeavor, which is you got to kill your darlings. What is
Yes.
that? How do you figure out whether a darling needs to get killed?
So it's sometimes it's because of the original version is not as good as we think it could be.
Hmm.
Like that's the case of some of these ones here. Just updating the look of it. In some ways, it may be subtle, like it's a spaceship fighter, but it just there's some things I'm like we just need to change this and that. Like the Brute is a great example. It
Hmm.
was just too derivative before, and now it feels more like the identity of the race is through it. And actually, the Gaunt was the same way. So these are all examples of ways where, or situations where we just didn't think the original one was holding up as much. And then there's other ones where you're like, hey, this is a cool idea. We had it modeled and we weren't sure what to do with it yet from like a long time ago. And we're like, okay, where do we put it? It's cool. Where do we put it at? And trying to go the other route, which is finding a place for it versus like that thing's got to go. We're gonna
Hmm.
replace it. It's kind of goes the other way, but it's like 80-20. You find something that we need to fix. Like I was just going over with uh, our concept artist, the Cree right now, and trying to figure out if we want to do some work on him. And so, yeah, I was going to show you, but I'm going to hold off on that. I
For
only
next
see
time.
so much. Yeah.
Reason for y'all to tune in and subscribe to the channel, right? So you don't miss the career reveal. Okay, that's my plug, Alan. We're good. We can move on.
Nice. So here's another unit actually, the Hellborn,
Hmm.
that we just tweaked texturing on to make him read a lot better. I just
Hmm.
have to put some effects on around his neck because he's got this. It's hard to tell. But he's got this open chest like from his neck, and he's got fire in there, but it just needs to be like more like really noticeable. And so we did is we changed the team color and consolidated it again to the legs and played with the values, and he reads way better now because
Hmm.
before it's he's got 8 limbs and it's just a lot going on, and so he's in work in progress, but he looks way better now. And so now just that process continues on, as long as we can, just to continually tweak things. And as well as we're adding new stuff, like when these go into the game, these new units, we'll get feedback on those guys too.
Hmm. Speaking of, well, sorry, because you're all of a sudden we've panned over and there's a whole bunch of new infernal structures we got to talk about. So, Alan, ignore me. Keep going.
Yeah. No, I think we're gonna show this off right now, but first is gonna show off Pandora, or that's the unofficial name. So this casting unit, this character was I think we first talked about it. She was
Hmm.
concepting. It wasn't even a full concept at that point, and now she's in the game. And we're playing with the animations, but Kristen's done a really good job making it feel like this thing's floaty, and which is hard to do. And the box is just it's being manipulated. You can see her feet kind of move up and down on it. And the thing is, when she casts, and there's no effects on it yet, but you can see the
Okay.
animation moving of her the pieces flying out, and like the puzzle box kind of Hellraiser element we've been going
Hmm.
for,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which leads right into. her cousin here, so to speak.
Oh,
This
wait.
is the I was gonna say this is the new Iron Vault. We probably have a different name for it, and
Hmm.
it's not finished yet. This is it's close though, but there's some cool animations on it. Um, it looks like it needs some more effects, but this is again the epitome of the puzzle box, the thing we talked about with
Yeah, I
it.
really like that with the box where it disassembling and reassembling. That looks awesome.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, and it'll get a little more complex, and we're gonna probably clean these up in the back, the floaty bits. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's this is the finally the stuff we talked about like a long time ago is finally getting into the game, which is great. Here's another one here, the Conclave. So this is the research for magic, and so again, there's no specific effect or just some general like idle ones, but it's got like the evil halo. It's got the rune symbols that pop up, and then it would have certain animations for research and that kind of stuff. But again, we're trying to do like more with the runes and the glyphs on it.
So is the
And
conclave change? Sorry, is the conclave changing then? Because the conclave is the production structure, or is this supposed to be
yeah.
the ritual chamber eventually?
Oh, actually, no, you got me. You got me in that one. So this is actually still the same conclave.
Okay, okay.
So it's not research. That one is this cool temple tree. It's a big
Ooh, okay. I've been excited about this one.
demonic tree thing, which is almost in the game, not quite. So
Oh,
that'll be replacing the magic research building. So and again, like it's hard to tell here. It's subtle in some of the buildings, but we went with a almost a Northwestern Native American uh, kind of influence on like the Seahawks symbol. There's a name
hmm.
for it. I'm spacing out right now, but I grew up in Alaska, and we see this kind of art
Yeah.
often, and so we kind of integrated that into the the uh, the demon aesthetic just to make it feel a little more. It was already kind of halfway there because it's like there's ruins, and you can see it on the new. This is also the new building called the tribute tribute pyre. I thought it was tribunal pyre. Okay, tribute pyre, and it's basically the food gap. So this is the old pig farm or
Yeah,
meat
yeah, yeah.
farm, and so originally the idea was this top part right here would rotate to like the evil side.
Hmm.
It's like the old Manny Arms thing or something, just like front and back. And when you got attacked, if it recognized you were getting attacked, it would do that. And the these gremlins, these guys are the new Felhog equivalent.
Hmm.
They have these masks on because we have this lore we're developing with that, and they worship this thing. And they would pop out when it rotated around. It was like a signal, but the gameplay changed, which is totally fine. And so now it's just more an art thing. So we're gonna put some more effects on it, but it's got like the fire here that would shoot up higher whenever it's building things, and these guys would come out and auto attack.
Looks like they're dancing around it. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, they're dancing and
Okay,
worshiping
okay.
it. They're like hardcore, you know, just there's the ones that just you tell them to jump over a cliff and they're like, yeah, you got it. There's they're hardcore, so they're defending your base. And
Awesome.
there's a couple more buildings we have that aren't quite in there. The new Dark Hold, which is the equivalent of the HQ Shrine,
Hmm. Yeah.
is being modeled right now, and then we have the tree, and then some of the other ones we're not doing full models on. We don't have the time for it, so we're doing texture passes on them and minor tweaks, so they fit in aesthetically with everything else still.
Alan, we've talked about a lot of the new stuff here. We've talked a lot about the new visual designs of the structures of the units. But it sounds like you have one more thing for us that might be a little bit of a teaser.
So this is just something we're not going to talk about, but if I can accidentally show you, then no one's ever frozen the screen on a video before and looked at something. But so this is an object that's going to be really cool. It's going to do some fun stuff, and it's not even animated yet. This is barely visible, but you can see there's a couple on this map here, and
Hmm.
we made the area around it kind of like corrupted a little bit, so it feels a little more like it's powerful and it's not necessarily demonic, but it's more just like otherworldly energy that's kind of burned a spot in the environment here, and it does some fun stuff.
Exciting stuff. Alan, as
Let's
we
see.
are, I assume, unless there's more stuff that we haven't talked about, but as we're taking a look at all the fresh updates, the exciting things that we have taken a look at. I really like the new vault, by the way. There were some questions that people were talking about, asking about in the Discord. And I said, hey, I'm going to be talking to Alan again. And I think the one that is a little bit the most interesting, especially given our conversation about killing your darlings, on this process of redesigning all the units, or not all the units, but redesigning the visual identity of Vanguard, of Infernals, eventually Celestials. Is there an idea that got left on the cutting room floor that did have you excited that just didn't quite make it in?
I mean, we're still in a spot where nothing is dead.
Okay.
Like, like maybe in the future or an expansion, but there's definitely some things like that we talked about. And yeah, I can't think of anything offhand without showing you stuff, and I don't have anything
Mhm.
ready. But there's definitely stuff where like that was a great idea. And right now we just kind of like, okay, put a pin in it, come back in, down the road, and we'll add to the army hopefully. And but there's always stuff like that for
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
And
Okay.
some of it relies on tech. I always wanted to get for the Infernals, I wanted to get like a Beastmaster or a Shadow Master,
Hmm.
where there's an old comic book called, and a game actually called The Darkness, where you just have these little shadowy imps that flood out like 20 or 30 of them, then you just go off and raise havoc. And I wanted to get something like that in for the, but it takes tech and whatnot. So
Hmm.
or a unit that would shoot out things that stuck onto the uh, the target and like start piling up on him,
Hmm.
and like the scene from The Incredibles. And so there's things
Yeah.
like that. And but the fun thing is, sometimes we can't make it in multiplayer, but we can put it into campaign. And
Hmm.
so, like, there might be specific things. Every once in a while, there's something where, like, hey, this is a cool idea for something it's just too OP or just loud visually for multiplayer. But can we get it in? Like, how's the level progression? Can we get it in somehow as a secret weapon or an event or something? And so there's some of those cases in there for sure. And so you'll see those soon.
Soon. TM there on that one. Because yeah, I mean, talk about Beastmaster. I always thought it'd be really cool if Infernals could go and corrupt creeps and bring them over to their side and fight with them. But we'll see how that. We'll see if that ever happens. But for now, Alan, I'm very excited about the new things. I think if we're going to talk about highlights here, Iron Vault's awesome, and I really like the new animations on the flyers. It makes them feel like they're aircraft in atmosphere, not the skimmers that they used to be. So I think that's really significant improvements. But before we're done, also I love the little I don't know what they're called now. The previous Fellhogs dancing around the pyre is awesome.
I can just tell the gremlins now, but yeah, it's the
Gotcha.
name. I was gonna call 'em, like, the faceless ones because they have the masks on, and they have to
Hmm.
earn. There's still, we're still playing around with them lore on that, but it's slowly getting to the point where we can start stacking some of these themes together. It's just more a matter of time to polish it.
Gotcha. But I guess my final question is whether you got any final thoughts, anything that we haven't talked about yet that we should have talked
Nothing
about
I can
yet.
show you, but there's definitely some cool stuff in the
Awesome.
campaign. We're working very hard in the campaign. There's a bunch more missions, and there's actually a space mission where you can see the skybox below you, like you're in orbit, and
Mm.
that's going really well. And yeah, there's just some epic moments. I'm always asking, like I said before, I'm always asking for any excuse to have like big, huge death laser beams from orbit, or just OP Michael Bay stuff. And so we have some of those in there as well, and just really good storytelling, really good flow, the design, and just fun. I think just if you like RTSs at all, even just even if you're just a casual player, we're making a really fun campaign, and we can't wait to get out for everybody.
Oh, final question then, because in the campaign we got a new cutscene cinematic, and I don't know how much, because you are the art director. I don't know how much control you had of that, what the timing was, but what was the process of developing that new cinematic? It looks awesome. The shot of Earth with the animus clouds all around it uh, was a distinct wow. This is kick ass type of moment. So, what was that process like?
I'm going to show you something that being a small company is nice because you don't have to worry
Hmm.
about behind the scenes, or like you can't show the ugly stuff, or how how the sausage is made, so to speak, how everything got to this point. So this is okay. So yeah, the cinematic came out amazing. Chris Culp did a great job on it, and it was a team effort, but also like he put a lot of hours into it. And so this is the starting point. I made this in Premiere, I think, and I just hacked a bunch of stuff together. So this is a little bit different, but that was gonna be the ship. And it just helps. It's just
Yeah.
it helps storyboards it, but it just gets the idea across. And we're flying past Mars, yay! Okay, this one's not the right. There's a better one. But this is the first one.
Hmm.
And you just kind of go through and you're like looking at stuff, you're flying through space, and it was gonna be like more like you're going to the atmosphere, or not the atmosphere, the solar system, and you're hearing like, Mars base, Saturn base, and they're like everything's dead.
Yeah.
There's like debris everywhere and guys bouncing off the windshield, and just a little more than we can put into it. And then you see like, oh my God, Earth is screwed. And then and we do the reentry, and then that was basically the idea. So it came from that to where it is now, which is we did it all in house, and it came out super good. And I think one of the helpful things was there was no characters. Nobody's talking, so that allowed us to do things on the cheap and
Mhm.
get stuff looking really nice without having to spend a ton of time animating stuff.
Makes sense. But yeah, that shot of, I mean, that shot of Earth infested with animus should be on all your promotional graphics, because it is very cool. It is one of those. It really does a good job of setting you in place. But yeah, that's a pretty cool early storyboard. I love doing these because it means we get to peel back the curtain a little bit and see the cheese in process, not just the final. I don't know. We're not going to call it smelly cheese because that some people don't like that, but the final delicious cheese.
Delicious cheese. We like delicious
There
things.
we go.
Yes.
Unless it's 6 pool in my base very early, and then we don't like that type of cheese. But yeah, don't 2-gate me, bro. That's fine. Allen, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of the art and show and tell with. This has been Show and Tell with Allen Dilling, where we took a look at the art. There we go. That's the sign off. Thank you for watching, and if you like it, hit the sub button. Follow me on
Good talking
Twitch.
to you again.
There we go.
Call this guy. He's awesome.
See you later, Allen. Thank you so much.
All right, later. All right, later.